Just want to talk to you guys this morning about some techniques that we've used over the years and that we use today at Oklahoma State. First thing I want to talk about is what I look for as a defensive back coach, what we look for at Oklahoma State as a defensive back, just the characteristics, some of the things that we feel are important. First thing is that the young man has to love football. Very important that you play defensive back in college football. There's a lot of commitment, a lot of time that takes place that you're not a normal student. So the first thing that we say that the guy got to do is play defensive back. He got to love football. Next thing is he got to have great athletic ability. Mostly everybody today understands that it's an offensive game. So if you're going to be guarding some of the guys that play offense and that operate on the offensive side of the ball, you got to have a lot of athletic ability to be able to be successful as a defensive back. The next thing is he has to be a very competitive young man. He has to hate to lose. And when he hates to lose, he'll do everything that he can to win. Next thing is that as a coach, you have to trust him. His teammates have to trust him because his position is vital. Focus, making sure that he's doing everything that he can to be in the right place, to play the defense as called, to be sound. You have to be able to trust him. Next thing that goes kind of along with that trust is he has to be a communicator. Guys have to believe that he knows what to do. He has to be able to give them checks, keep everybody on the same page, so it's important that he's going to have to be able to communicate. Next thing is, and it's not the end-all, be-all, but he has to have size for the position. Very important that a guy has the proper size for a defensive back as a corner or a safety to be able to operate in today's football. Then, especially at the safety position, but don't leave it out at the corner position, the guy has to have toughness about him. He has to be mentally tough as well as physically tough. Then he has to have speed. He has to be fast enough to be able to guard some of the quicker players on the field, and he has to be able to vertically defend pass routes. Finally, he has to be smart. Because of the, like I said earlier, because of the fact that he has to make checks, the fact that he has to keep everybody on the same page, it's important that this young man is smart, that he understands football, that he understands his position on the field, as well as other players on the field and their place within the defense. Now, our emphasis on defense at Oklahoma State, there's a few things that we talk about, and I'll just talk about 3 of them today. First thing is we want to make sure that we play hard. We're going to play with great effort. We're going to get off blocks, and we're going to have what I call fanatical effort to the football. It's an effort that when you see it on video, you know it stands out. That's the kind of effort that we want to leave the game every week with our opponents saying that they play with fanatical effort. Next thing is we want to play smart. We talked about it earlier when we talk about individuals, but as a defense, we want to play smart. We want to be students of the game. We understand that at the college level, there's a lot of pressure to win, a lot of physical demands, a lot of time constraints that go along with it. That our kids today, they're the Xbox generation. You got to be able to operate. They have to be able to operate with technology. So it gives us an opportunity as coaches to provide them with a lot of resources to be able to learn the game, learn the systems. But we expect our guys within that Xbox technological movement that they're in to be able to be coaches on the field. And the next thing, and really this is the final one that I'll talk about as far as our emphasis, is that we want them to play tough. We feel like that football is a man-on-man, a will-imposing game, and that's what we talk about here at Oklahoma State. just get into some press man technique. First thing you'll see it flashing here on the screen is that as a coach, you must train aggression at all times. Now, the first thing that I talk to you about is the stance. We want to make sure that the defensive back in press man has a square stance and that his feet are about shoulder width apart. But let me rewind just a little bit. We are in an aggressive posture. Everything that we show this defense, we show this receiver, that we show this quarterback is aggression. We're going to show him by our movement, by our stance, by our body position, by our mannerisms, that we are really going to be aggressive. But as you see, as we go through it, there'll be some times where we are not. We are retreating, but we want to, before the ball snaps, show this guy that we're about to fight at the line of scrimmage. So our stance, we want to be about shoulder width apart, no wider. I've seen guys stagger their feet. I've seen guys square their feet. Most of the time, I'll start my training with squared feet. The next thing is our alignment. We want to make sure in our alignment that we squeeze the football. But like I said earlier, we're going to give the impression that we're about to fight at the line of scrimmage, but as we get into it, we're going to retreat a lot of times. So now what I want to do when I squeeze the alignment is I want to make sure that I'm tight to the receiver, but I'm not too tight so as I can't see. I can't react properly. If I'm too tight, I'm not going to be able to react properly. So I'm going to squeeze, but I don't want to get in a situation where when the receiver releases, he's into my face mask. I don't have enough room to react to him. Next thing is guys want to have their eyes all over the place. As you start into the movement, you want to make sure that your eyes are what I call on his leverage hip. There are times when people play press man with inside leverage. There are times when you train press man from outside leverage, and there are times when you play it from a head up position. What we want to do is we want to have our eyes on the belt loop of the leverage hip. If I'm playing it straight up, then I want to put my eyes directly on that belt buckle. Then the hands. I've seen many different things with the hands. I've trained different things with the hands. But the thing that I do today is I tell my guys, hey, we want to get our hands combat ready. What that means is there's some movements that we're going to have to take that we're going to have to punch this receiver. So what I want to do is I want to have my hands in a combat position. I don't want to have them hanging. I've seen a lot of guys in the higher levels of football, they're going to hang those hands. And the reason that I don't do that is because when it's time to move those hands, I'm going to lift them. So I like to have my hands in a combat position, combat ready, as if I'm a boxer. Now once this receiver makes a move, then I like to tell my defensive backs, okay, well, what I want to do is when he makes a move, I'm going to slow down and react to it. So if that receiver, let's just imagine here, I'm inside leverage, slightly inside leverage on the receiver. The ball is to my right as I'm aligned as a defensive back. Once the receiver releases, he's going to give me a great pounding. What I have to do is, just like I tell the defensive back, is I'm going to slow down. Don't go for the fakes, go for the break. So when he gives me the great pounding, I'm going to, what I call shadow. I'm going to shadow release, meaning I'm going to slide. Some people call it inching. Some people call it give ground. I'm going to give ground grudgingly, trying to stay square in the shadow of this receiver, imagining that the sun is behind the receiver, and I'm going to be in that shadow, staying square as long as I can. Like I said, early on, we give the impression that we are going to be aggressive and fighting at the line of scrimmage, but once that receiver releases, now I'm going to give ground, staying square, and I'm going to read his and react to his release. Once the receiver now releases to my left, I'm aligned inside and to my right, he releases to my left, what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch that shoulder pad with the opposite hand. Some people call it an offhand jam. I like to say opposite hand. I'm going to punch the shoulder pad with the opposite hand, and I train the defensive back that his shoulder pad is the largest pad on his body, so we can control him if we punch to that shoulder pad. And we don't want to lunge. We don't want to be out of control. It's a punch just like a boxer would give. Once we punch this receiver, then we get to the next phase, because we have punched him and we have thrown off the timing, what we feel, thrown off the timing enough so that we can go to the next phase, which is the cutoff. We're going to open our hips to the receiver. We're not going to let that receiver come back across our face. So we're going to open our hips to him, forcing him one direction, which is outside and up the field. But now, the thing that I try to train the receiver is, hey, you're going to have to cut off the vertical line. You're going to have to do everything you can to cut off the vertical line. The image that I give them is that the receiver has a zip cord tied to his chest. And as that receiver has that zip cord tied to his chest, he's being pulled to the goal line. You, as a defensive back, if you want to be successful in defending the vertical route, you have to cut off this vertical line. You do that by getting your shoulders in front of the receiver, by getting your hand down low and disrupting his running pattern. Then, as you push down the field, we hear offensive coaches talk all the time about telling their receiver to lean, to leave the quarterback room to throw the ball, to throw it away from the defensive back. So we understand that as that receiver pushes down the field vertically, there'll come a point where he'll lean away from the defensive back. We teach the defensive back to compensate for this lean. You have to be ready for this lean, and you have to lean into the receiver. You have to seek contact to the receiver. Then you never look unless you are within handshaking distance. If you can shake the receiver's hands, then now you can look for the football. The place that you look is also very important. It's important that you don't look back to the quarterback, to the backfield. You take a quick peek for the ball in your area. No ball in your area. Ball up high, no ball up high in your area. You go right back to the receiver, because that's the best way to get beaten, is by looking back into the backfield. If you are out of position, if you are not in control of the receiver, then you never look back. You never look back. What you want to do at that time is you want to run to the receiver's hand. When we get into the red zone, about 20 to 30% of the time, we'll use all these techniques that we talked about. We'll use the press technique, and we'll get up in his face, and we'll retreat, and we'll do all those things, especially as we get around the 20, the 22, the 18-yard line, the 15-yard line. But when we get into the 12-yard line area, 12-yard line and in, what we want to try to do at that time is we want to try to use what we call the slant technique. And when we use the slant technique, it means basically, the way it's named, is that defensive back is going to align in the slant of the receiver. When he aligns in the slant of the receiver, if the receiver runs the slant, that's going to be a terrible collision. Either we're going to come up with the football, or the receiver is going to not play the next play. If the receiver runs a vertical route, what we tell the defensive back to do at that time is you're going to go and chest him up. We say face him up, chest him up, get your chest on his chest, because if the quarterback is throwing the fade to the receiver, this allows the defensive back to be able to see through to this throw. If the receiver releases vertically and puts his hips, drops his hips, puts his feet in the ground, and drives back as a fade stop, we're going to run through the fade stop. I try to train my guys that it's almost like a tackle.
I'm going to step on his toes. I'm going to be very aggressive. I'm not going to be over the top of the fade stop. I'm going to be through it and underneath it, if anything at all. If the receiver runs a fade, just like I said earlier, it gives the defensive back an opportunity to see through, to play through the receiver for the football. Now, I talked about the shadow technique a little bit earlier, and what the shadow technique does, or what the shadow technique allows the defensive back to do, is it allows me to work on my proper feet, gives me an opportunity to stay square, and then it gives me a base so that I'll be able to strike, know how to strike with my opposite hand on that receiver. What I do when I use this drill, it's called a shadow drill, of course. When I use this drill, I'll get step over dummies. I'll get 4 of them, and I'll get my guys at the top of the step over pad. I'll give them a ready break. They'll shadow, meaning giving ground grudgingly, meaning slide. Some people call it slide. Some people call it inching, but it's not a back pedal. Younger defensive backs, they want to back pedal. They want to lift those feet. We are grazing across the grass, giving ground grudgingly, because I want to be in a position so that if I had to strike back forward at any time, I could. So that's the shadow drill. With those 4 pads, I'll have a guy go pad 1, he'll reset on pad 2, he'll shadow on pad 2. He'll go up to the top of pad 3, he'll reset, he'll shadow on, and most of the times I'll let them go on their own. The first guy will go, the second guy will go once this first guy gets to pad number 2. So we'll go 4 times shadow, because of the fact that when we use this technique out on the field, most of the time the receiver will get into his route pretty quickly. So I think the length of this step over pad gives us the opportunity to shadow in a realistic time frame, just like we would on the field. Staying square, having those hands ready, making sure that we're not backpedaling, very important in this drill. The next drill that we use is a drill we call the high point with a partner. And what I'm trying to do is, we talked about cutting off the vertical route. We talked about leaning on the receiver. So what I'll do is I'll take 2 guys. I'll take a defensive back and I'll take a partner. And all we do is we go through all those techniques that we talked about earlier. And then at the end of the drill, what I'll do, and we don't go 30, 40 yards down the field. We'll go 10 yards down the field. But what I'll do is I'll throw the ball up high. And what I want that defensive back do, the player who is acting as the defensive back, he's going to wheel around using his techniques. He's going to cut off. He's going to lean. But now when it's time to go up, we want him to go up and jump. The guy who is acting as the receiver, what we want him to do is, as the defensive back goes up to play the football, we want him to push. We want him to prohibit. We want him to pull down. Now, what we have to do is we have to make sure that the receiver understands this is the defensive back's drill, so it's only going to be a slight tug. It's only going to be a slight pull. It's only going to be a slight push. But we're just getting this defensive back accustomed to having a little bit of a conflict when he goes up to get the football. The next drill, and my final drill, is what we call the point of attack passing drill. Very important as defensive backs that you work and see the drills that you see every day. See the routes that you're going to see during the week. Most of the time what we align our guys is we'll align field corners and boundary corners, field safeties and boundary safeties. So when we're aligned in this configuration, we understand that the field corner, he's going to see routes that the boundary corner will hardly ever see. The field safety, he'll defend routes and route concepts that the boundary safety will not necessarily have to defend. So what we do is we divide our defense in such a way that we can show them as coaches the routes, as you see on the screen. We can show them the routes that they see in a given week, or that they'll see at certain times during the game. The groups will divide and they'll work independently. Now, old school name for this is half line, but when we worked half line, you had left side go, right side go, left side go, right side go, left side go, right side go, and on and on. While we did the drill in this fashion, we got fewer reps. When we divided the groups independently, and if you notice on the screen, we had the mic. He's always the odd man out. We had two mics. We had a mic go with each drill, and as we divided these groups and made them independent groups, we saw that we ended up being able to get many, many more reps. So it's a drill that I'd like to pass on to you. And with that, appreciate you guys' time. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Go Football Office.